how do I take photos of a building for a client? Well, I'm going to have a brief. What photos are needed. I'm going to know what the photos are for. I'm going to know how many photos are needed. And I might have a shot list. So this makes things a lot easier. And my style is my style. People know what the photos are going to look like. And you can see numerous examples of work on my website, rickmcevoyphotography.com. Quick plug there. Nice one, Rick. And that's not in the script. So I know what I'm doing, which is a great start. I know what I'm producing. And I know how I'm going to take and process the images to get the look that I already produced. Because if somebody doesn't want the photos that look like all the other photos I've taken, I'm going to do something different. But 99 times out of 100, I just do what I've done before and people are happy with that, which is nice. Now, yeah, there will be job-specific stuff. Each job, it has its own nuances. And that is the first use of the word nuances on the podcast, I'm pretty sure. Now, for me, one of my big variables on every building that I photograph is it's where the building is and its orientation, and also the time of year I'm taking the photos. And not in the script, but equally important to me is the time I've got to take the photos. Sometimes I've got an hour, 2 hour slot and I have to get in and out in that time, which gives me a lot less flexibility. I often don't have the luxury of being able to pick a time to take the photos. I'm given the time and I have to work with it. That's just my reality. So yeah, building, location and orientation, the big factors for me that I have to deal with. Now, sometimes I can deal with them in advance through planning, and on most occasions I just do the best with what I've got. But the thought processes are the same. During my appointment, I will have established what time of day is best to take photos, where I've got a choice and the time to take them, obviously, because the sun moves throughout the day and the orientation and what is important will dictate the best time. As in, what is the most important elevation typically, because if I can get that one with the sun on it and at an angle to give some shadows and some depth and what have you, that's great. Now, if I'm working for an architect, I've got a bit more flexibility. If I'm doing a real estate shoot, I'm just getting in there and taking the photos whatever time. Different clients have different needs. That's very important to remember. But whatever the case, my starting point is that I know what the subject matter is. I know when I'm going to take the photos. I know what they're for. I know what they're going to look like. So I'm starting from a very strong position. Now, I'm going to skip gear prep, which is one for another episode. But my gear will be properly prepped, always. So this is what I do on the day of the shoot, or shot, as my script says. I'm just going to change that. Bear with. Right, that's that little typo dealt with. This is what I do on the day of the shoot. I will turn up at the location, and the first thing I will do is walk around and have a good old look and a good old think. And this is without my camera. Yep, I'm looking and thinking. I'm working out how I'm going to approach the shoot, knowing what I already know, which I've just told you. So what am I looking for? Well, let's use the front of the building as an example, because that's going to be the first photograph that I take. So the light is important. Where's the light coming from? Where is the sun? And how does that interact with the front of the building? Now, if it's overcast, which it often is here in England, I'm not going to think about this too much, because what I've got an even, soft, diffused overhead light. It's the sun through cloud, and it's actually a very effective light. So it's not a bad thing, and it makes life a lot easier because it doesn't really matter what time I do what. But if the sun's out, this wonderful three-directional light, it will impact the external photos. Like I say, if I'm taking photos for an architect, it's more of a consideration than if I'm doing a real estate shoot. And that's not demeaning real estate shoots. It's just that different clients, I've said it before, I'll say it again, have got different needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work out how to make the best use of this free light source, and that will influence when I take which shot. That's the quick bit of thinking I need to do, which will determine the sequence. What I like to do is photograph a building in a logical sequence, starting with the front and going around the sides in a logical order, and then doing the insides, because it makes it easy when I come to editing the photos, and I know that I've covered everything, and I'm trying to tell the story of a building, believe it or not. That's what I'm trying to do. So where the sun is, it can influence that timing. And how does this relate to composition? Well, Part of getting the best composition is to get the best light for each photo that you take. It's completely relevant. Make best use of the light. If you got a choice of when you can take photos, make that light work the best for your photos, because it's free and it can make a massive difference. If the light's rubbish, you can end up with a rubbish photo. If the light's amazing, you can end up with an amazing photo. But it depends what you're taking a photograph of, who for, and all that good stuff. Getting back to the subject. For the front of the building, I'm going to start off with a straight-on shot. Now, everything I'm saying here, it's assuming I've got unimpeded access, by the way. So in the first photo, I will stand in the middle of the building. And my camera's level. It's completely level. I don't tilt the camera back to fit the building in unless I have to. That's why I use a 17mm lens, so I don't need to. And if that means there's more foreground in the composition, that's fine, because I want to capture the building level and vertical. I want to get everything as accurate as I can in camera. And I'm going to use the central focus point only, and I'm going to make sure that that is slap bang in the middle of that face of the building. And then I'm going to look for an even area between the edge of the building and the edges of a photo. This won't necessarily be the case with the top and the bottom, but left and right of the building should be central, so the gap should be even, because it needs to look central in the photo. It's very important. This is technical composition I'm talking about now. And I'll get as tight as I can do when composing, as tight as what I'm photographing will allow. And I'm not going to do that by zooming in. I'm going to do that by moving forward or back to get the right composition, because I want to take every photo at 17mm. I want everything to be consistent. And I need to get the boundary on either side of the building and anything relevant to the front. And if there's an aerial on the roof, I want all of that, because if it's there, I need to capture it. I don't want to cut it off. And if there's trees in the back garden, I want all of those in. I might actually, if there's a load of trees that I want to include, I might take a second photo of the front, including them. The first photo is the main building, but nothing on the building is cut off. It's the building complete as I see it. Yeah, this is a technical exercise, and I'm going to take the time to get the most technically correct composition I can. This isn't art, this isn't anything sophisticated. This photo is a technical photo of the front of a building for a specific need. The composition has to be so correct that there's no cropping or correcting of verticals or horizontals needed. The composition shows the building as it is to its best, but it's technically correct. It's no good if the building's leaning over or anything, is it? It's got to be bang on. So I get the composition bang on, and it saves me time later in processing, which I'm happy with. And once I've got that first composition, I've got that first photo, I take it, then I'll move on to the next shot. And for me, that is going to be the front elevation and also the wall to the left-hand side. Now, it might not be 45 degrees on. It might just be, I don't know, 60 degrees, say, from the front. So I'm showing the side wall. I'm showing the depth of the building. But the composition of the first photo with the gaps either side, top and bottom, I want that the same in the next photo. And I'm photographing the middle of the subject matter again. That's where I'm focusing. My composition is centered around that, and that's my focus point too. Didn't mention that before. I got the focus point, but I'm focusing on the facade of the building because that's my subject matter. I'm using f8, so depth of field isn't a problem. I might need to think about it a bit for these shots where I've got the two elevations, but f8, 17mm full frame, it's normally fine. Okay. Oh yeah, and all the photos are taken in landscape orientation unless I have to change to portrait. Or if a client has asked me for more portrait orientation photos, which is getting more the case these days. There's been a change in, obviously, where people view photos of buildings. I mean, for an architect, not as much as real estate. Right, I'm going to stop there because the point is this. I get the composition of the first photo as perfect as I can, and then I repeat this for every other external photo. They need to look similar. They need to be a coherent set. They need to be taken with the same composition, okay? That's the externals of a building. That's how I approach it. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. It can be quite a quick process. And if you think about it, I've got some fixed things there which I'm replicating from one photo to the next. I'm focusing in the middle of what I'm photographing. I've got an equal space either side. I've got an equal space top and bottom. I'm not changing my camera settings. So it's about getting the camera in the perfect position to get the composition. That is the work in this. That's where the thought comes in. Right, for interiors, well, I'm normally after 2 photos of each room. One looking into the room and one looking from the room towards the wall with the doors and picking up the room it connects to. This is about showing how the rooms relate to each other. It's the story of the internal space. That's what I'm trying to convey. Again, I'm using a 17mm lens on a full frame camera, so my composition is going to capture all of a room in 2 images if possible. For smaller rooms, I'm going to use portrait orientation, but only when I have to. And we're talking toilets, utility spaces, cupboards, and stairs, obviously. My compositions are normally taken from the door looking in, getting as much of the room in and technically bang on. Verticals and horizontals have to be perfect in every composition. I've not got the same constraints of space either side because each room's different, so it's recording each room in a similar way if I can do. If a room's big enough that I need to take a third photo, or it's got features in it that mean I need to take a third photo, or a fourth, or a fifth, or a sixth, whatever it takes, that's what I'll do. This is how I approach it. My photos have to be technically excellent, and this starts and ends with the composition. Yeah, I know it's not a creative process, but this is what I do.